It's the last week of the National Football League regular season, which means the old guys are back. It's the first show of the new year, Richie Smalls. Thank you for noticing that and recognizing us being here another year. For old guys, it's never guaranteed. We're always happy for that extra day, extra year, what have you. We have the new feature that we're going to continue into the new year, which is we're live, which we're not used to. So go ahead and show us some love with hitting the like button. We've got plenty of time here tonight to get to all your questions. Hit up your questions in chat, regardless of what they're about: football, basketball, the NBA rotations that we're talking about before we came on air, Tyron Woodley, even though I don't really know what that's about. But if there are questions that we can address, then we'd be happy to do so. Stats is here with us this week, and no, that isn't a apartment in the Bronx where sometimes in order to get heat in the house, they actually just set fires. It is on TV, so Stats is safe. Stats, Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's good to see you. How was did you spend the New Year in Florida or did you venture north?
New Year was in Florida. The Christmas Eve, that was up north. So I made it back down in time. So I had a dinner to go to. I met Wiley for the first time as well.
Sorry about
Saturday.
that.
So that was nice. It was nice to meet Wiley in person. And so just had a nice little nice New Year's down here. And now just I'm ready to reset, ready to lose some weight, and ready to get reset.
There you go. We'll quiz you about your meeting with Wiley here in a little bit because I haven't met him, so I have some questions. Uncle T has met him. Uncle T is here. Uncle T, Happy New Year. I did something yesterday on Amazon. I was in Cancun for the week between Christmas and New Year's. My wife and I, we left on Christmas Day, and it was an all-inclusive. It was the first time we've done an all-inclusive, and they had a health bar, which is where I would go every morning and get this huge juice. They had all these different juices. And so I bought on Amazon yesterday, Uncle T. My wife actually laughed at me pretty heavily. I bought a juicer. Do you use a juicer, Uncle T?
No, I don't.
I bought.
Strike me as a juicing guy.
No.
I also bought a like 3 or 4 pack of raspberries and a big thing of strawberries because I'm so excited for my juicer to get here tomorrow. With Prime, it's 1.5 day delivery, Uncle T. And I'm gonna get a juicer. I'm gonna make juice every day because I actually lost weight on this trip. Now, I was sick the beginning of it, but then the rest of the time we ate as normal American slobs do, and we drank like normal American slobs do. So what do you think of that? What do you think? I mean, are you excited about the juicer arriving at JT's house?
I mean, first off, Happy New Year to you guys. And it's hard to believe we're finishing up a 4th year of the Old Guys podcast, right, JT? We figured when we first started this, we had no idea if it would last 1 week, 1 month, or what, but it's been a lot of fun. So first off, great to finish another year. Good to have Stats here with us, filling in for Holden tonight. As far as the juicer, yeah, you were sick for a good, 3, 4, 5 days or so. So you probably lost maybe, 60% of that weight you supposedly or allegedly are losing based off of probably not eating real well for 3 or 4 or 5 days. So let's make that clear. First off.
No, first of all, that's not true. I weighed myself the morning of the flight because I shaved. I hadn't shaved in a few days. And I was like 211. And then the 4th day in Mexico, I was like 208. And I was like, all right, this doesn't make any sense to me, but who knows? So don't insult me like that.
You know the funny part about you just mentioned in 208. So we were at our New Year's Eve party a couple nights ago at the family, and my brothers, none of my brothers listened. I got 4 other brothers. None of my brothers will listen to the show, so I can say this. But just I don't want to be mean, but it looks like 208. I said my New Year's resolution might be to get back down around that 200 mark. So when you mentioned 208, JT, you and I might be pretty close as far as the weigh-in here going into the 2024 season.
Yeah, but I'm a foot taller than you. So I mean, you gotta take this now. Now you are Pooh's brother, is that not correct?
That's correct.
And you're telling me that you are much lighter than Pooh.
Oh, he's comfortably more than me. I mean, we're talking 25 to 30 more than me. Not even close.
He's robust around the middle. I do
I
remember.
mean, he's stout. Let's put it that way.
He's stout. Roth Window Cleaning Services is here, giving me some tips about berries, and I appreciate that. Stats, is Wiley tall? I've never seen him, but on some of these videos, is he tall? Is he a short guy?
Wiley's extremely tall.
Is he?
Yeah, and maybe one of the best looking human beings I've ever seen, male or female, in person. He's a good looking dude, man. I'm like, oh man.
Was he safe with you? Was he?
He was. I mean, if I was ever going to go that way, Wiley would be the guy I would go for. He was a good looking dude, but yeah, he's real tall. So you want to know? It's like we had a few drinks and we kind of parted our ways. He was going back to. He was going to go meet up with the family. His daughters were like texting him that looking for him and everything. So he was going his way. I was going mine, and I stayed for like a minute at the bar just finishing my drink, and then I went to the men's room. Wound up, I was right next to Wiley. This is the total man thing. Like you don't focus on who else is in the bathroom. I was next to him at the urinal and then at the sink next to him, never noticing it was him for however long that takes. And then he started talking to me. I'm like, dude, I never even saw that was you, which is good for me because I'm like, that's the man thing. Like you never pay attention. You should not have a conversation with anyone in the bathroom. You should never look at anyone else in that bathroom. So it was pretty funny that he was next to me and didn't even know it was him.
Stats, I wasn't sure where that was going to go when you said, he's a head taller than you, right? Or well,
that's the thing. Yeah,
he's look up and not down.
Yeah, no, he's got a lot more intel on me probably from that height, but yeah. So,
well, I've golfed with him before, and he's a tall unit. I mean, he's probably him and Big T are probably similar. They're both, I don't know, he might be a little bit shorter than Big T. I'm not sure. Probably 6'3" or 6'4", maybe.
Yeah, they're in that ballpark. Yeah, for sure. But the juice, JT, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I used to do smoothies like every night.
Yes.
And I'd eat a lot of fruit every night. Best thing I ever did was not doing that anymore. I lost 25 pounds. I lost 25 pounds by cutting out fruit.
Now, was that because you said you ate it late at night? Was that something?
That was the thing. I was eating them. I would eat like, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I'd make just a fruit smoothie, or I'd eat a whole bunch of pineapple or something like that. And just not doing that. Yeah, it's not good. The sugar and everything, especially at night, no good. So, but I cut it out pretty much altogether, the fruits.
Yeah, I've done this in the summer where I'll eat, strawberries or raspberries for lunch, right? As like a meal replacement. And that's kind of where I'm looking at it. Like instead of a yogurt and a big lunch, maybe having a small lunch and some juice in the morning. That's something, Uncle T, that excites me about maybe trying that out, because there was the second time I worked in California, I discovered Jamba Juice Stats, and they used to have one on Bay Ridge on 3rd Avenue, I think is where it was. And I love those things, but they're not as healthy as you would think, because there's 2 million calories in the thing. It's like drinking a 12-pack of Coke, but a lot tastier. And it's just you're right. It's not.
We had one in Union Square where I used to work right around the corner. I used to get it all the time. Yeah, because they tasted phenomenal. And then you get like a big Magnum thing, like a 32-ounce thing of this. And then I looked them up and I'm like, all right, yeah, this is not healthy one bit. It's like the acai bowls. You ever get that? The acai?
Yes.
I'm like, man, this is so good. And like, I'm reading all these health benefits of acai. Yeah, if you eat the acai, like if you just eat the fruit, but if you put 4 pounds of sugar in it to make it taste good, that's really defeating the entire purpose. I tried to cut pretty much all the sugar out for the most part, which is hugely beneficial. But yeah, no, those things. Well, the thing with the juice too, right? So I read this book called Genius Foods.
Yes.
And they made a good point in the book with juicing. They're like, we were never really meant to just drink the juice of the fruit. You're supposed to be having it with the fiber that's in the fruit at the same time. And think about how many oranges you have to eat to get the same amount as a glass of orange juice. It's just way more sugar than you were supposed to be. I used to drink juice. I mean, orange juice, all the time. Yeah. I just cut it all out. Like it's way better for you. But good luck with the juicer, JT. I know you're excited.
It's January 2nd. My plan has been completely blown to shit. It's because there was a Jamba Juice on when my office was on in Manhattan, was on 26th Street in the West Side, and there was a Jamba Juice on, I think it was 23rd and 7th. And I used to stop there every morning. And then, like you, I all of a sudden realized that why am I not hungry until dinner? And it's because there's a ton of calories in there. Uncle T, how was your Christmas? How was what did you guys do for New Year's? You're in the woods essentially of Kentucky. What did what was going on? Did you shoot any cattle? Did you shoot any fireworks? What did you do for New Year's to celebrate?
Yeah, I haven't shot anything. I've not shot anything in my life, JT. Never shot a gun before, so I've not killed anything. So that's a no. But no, over the holidays we talked about it a little bit last week, JT. Just some, a lot of family stuff. A lot of us were off, some days, had some days off. We got together for a couple family poker games and some friend poker games. Played some Texas Hold'em, had a little fun there, and then. Yeah, just hanging around the family for the most part. Everybody kind of, again, had their time off. And, sometimes when back when the kids, my kids are older now, but when they were younger, obviously it was a lot more hectic kind of getting them from point A to point B on the holidays with both my wife and I both having, bigger families. So that's a lot more, doable now with not having to, we still do the same running that we were doing, but having older kids now, it's so much easier. So, but no, enjoyed it. And it's good to be back though. Beginning of the year here, we got the national championship next week in college football, obviously, and then big week for me being a golf guy, golf and baseball, NFL, the sports I follow the most, but golf, I'm a huge golf guy. We just brought on a guy going to help, us out a lot on the golf side, Andy Locke. Saw a video they did today with Big T and Wiley, and he's going to be a huge benefit for our golf team coming up. They got the tournament of champions this week, so you got that going on. JT, obviously, you guys have been in the NBA streets, and then we obviously have one more week of the NFL. We'll talk about here momentarily, and then right into the playoffs there. So it's a fun time. March usually is a good time for me with March Madness, and then I love to start a baseball season, me personally, but. It's a good time of year. It's fun. A lot of sports going on, and we got you all covered over here at Run Pure Sports.
If you want to use code Andy, you can use that and get 15% off if you're not a member. If you want to type in a few extra letters, you can use Andy15 and get the same 15% off. If you want to type even more letters, you can type in New Year and get 15% off. So there's 3 different ways to get 15% of your first month's payment. What are you looking for out of the first golf weekend is in Hawaii? Is that correct?
Yeah, they're in Kapalua. So in the past, they've always had this tournament. Not sure how. I don't know that you guys follow it real well. If you do, I love it. But it's usually, or it has been for the previous year's champs, right? All the ones that have won a tournament the previous year. Some years it's 25 to 30. Some years on where it thins out, where maybe multiple winners weren't there. They have maybe 35 to 38. Well, this year they got almost 60. And I think what they did, they moved the field up a little bit with the people that were in the last 50 of the tournament or playoffs last year. So they kind of opened it up a little bit to a little bit bigger field. Rory's not playing this week, even though he qualified. So he's really the only big name guy. And then obviously John Rahm went to live there about a month ago. So those 2 guys won't be there, but it'll be a pretty good field otherwise. Scheffler will be there. All the top guys will be there from, that are in the field. So no, it's they're at a minimum field, a lighter field this week, no cut event, and then next week will be the first full field event at the Sony Open. So they just do the Hawaii swing there, where the first 2 tournaments over there on the island. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Stats, I know you do a lot of the sports. Do you get into the golf as well? Do you do the models for the golf, and do you do that all season long?
I do. Yeah, no, I'm big with the golf. So with the DFS betting, I'm in a bunch of office pools, like some survivor type pools for golf. So yeah, I follow it pretty closely. I'm just disappointed. I mean, you mentioned John Rahm. I'm just kind of disappointed. I don't know. I mean, as we keep losing guys on the PGA Tour here, the events are more and more of these events are becoming like second tier events. We've still got plenty of good golfers on the PGA Tour, but it does suck with how many of the top guys and some of the more exciting guys that you like to watch that won't be there on a week in, week out basis. So that's a little disappointing. But for betting purposes, yeah, golf starts this week, but golf really doesn't get going for the masses until April. Like that's, once we get out of the NCAA tournament, then it's like you would go right into that next weekend's the Masters, and it's rolling. So I mean, this is it. NFL playoffs. Now we go deeper with the NFL playoffs. We don't finish until like mid-Feb. For the baseball guys, that's when pitchers and catchers will start reporting. So we get a little bit of a lull, but college basketball really picks up. Once you finish the NFL now, it's like, boom, right into college basketball, the conference tournaments, and then we're into the NCAA, the big one. So, yeah, this is like the best time of the year. I mean, this is it. Like, I think once Jan 1 starts, we're in the best time. And those games last night were phenomenal too. The college football games. So we should have a pretty decent championship game, I would think.
Two questions. The first is, how does a golf survivor pool work? Because I think there are some people that might not know. I don't necessarily know. And then what are your thoughts on the Georgia whipping of Florida State's third string?
Yeah, so golf survivor pools, obviously you can run them a multitude of ways, but the most simple way is you're basically taking a guy. Now, in a survivor pool, you could play it where you have to take a guy to make the cut. And if they make the cut, you advance. Same thing, like you can't take another golfer again. We do one and dones where you can only pick a golfer one time for the season. Then you get points basically based on where they finish. And we do it with like 2 golfers a week. So not really a survivor in that sense, but sort of there's so many good golf pools that you could come up with. But the survivors, a lot of them are like cut pools. You got to make the cut to keep going. Those are typical golf survivors. And what was the Georgia game? Yeah, that's part of the problem here with the it's a big part of the problem with the transfer portal, right? I mean, you just can't have these guys. You can't have kids transferring mid bowls. I mean, they've got to figure out a way here where I saw Chip Kelly actually had a pretty good press conference. I don't know if you guys saw some of the Kelly's comments on just a lot of these things. I don't get too deep into exactly all the ins and outs of all the new rules and how they're paying players and whatnot. But he made some pretty good points in there. And one of his points was like, you just can't have these kids transferring mid bowls. I think it takes away from the bowl. And you saw the line on that game. I mean, it opened at like 14. I think it went up to like 21 and a half.
22 and a half.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, and it was never in doubt. I mean, I kind of liked Georgia anyway going into that one, just because I thought they had something. I mean, both teams had something to prove, but only one of them had the ability to prove what they wanted to prove. And I felt like, when they got up, they were going to run it up, which is kind of what they did. So, but it takes away. You have one of the premier bowl games, the 2 teams that were the last 2 out, and it was a dud of a game. So it does suck. It sucks for the fans. It sucks for the schools. And they've got a lot of changes that they're going to have to make in college football.
The system changed, Uncle T, with the NIL money, and now you're going to move. So it'll be different next year, right? Because you'll have the 12-team playoff. Everyone argued, 4 teams isn't enough. Are we going to see, Uncle T, complaints about the 12-team playoff now that, number 13 and 14? I certainly hope not, because this year, I mean, most years we struggle. This year was a little bit different, where you had all the undefeated teams or the one-loss teams that were very, very good. But I think 12 teams is probably, if not the right amount, even maybe a couple too many. What are your thoughts on that? And then are you in any golf survivor pools?
Yeah, I'm not in any golf survivor pools. I just actually sent Stats a message there, DM to send me some stuff on that, because I'd like to get into those. But as far as the Georgia game and the topic, JT, I kind of agree fully with what Stats said. I didn't see the Chip Kelly interview, but I did see the Kirby Smart interview, and I'm sure it was similar. I do think the 12-team playoff next year will help a little bit, but to Kirby Smart's point that he mentioned in his argument in his post, I don't know if it was post game or the next day, but he said you're still going to have bowl games that don't involve those 12 teams, right? To where you're going to get all this movement. You're going to have 4, 5, 6 guys on each side of the ball either opting out just because they don't want to get hurt because of their draft style. There's so many layers, little small layers of this whole topic. It's not just one thing. It's the money, it's the NIL, it's the transfer portal, it's the bowl season, it's the draft stock, or status, however you want to work. So I do think the 12-team playoff next year will help a little bit, JT, but I don't know that it's going to solve the actual topic of what we're talking about. I still think you're going to have situations where you're going to have some of these bowl games, and I don't know what the future is, to be honest, of these things. They've been around forever, but I'd still like to, as a broader scope, and I don't want to get too far down the college football talk because we're going to talk NFL, but I think what they should do is just go to 2 just power conferences, right? Just make 2 like 24 team, conferences or however you want to do it, and just put like 48 teams in and have 2. I think me and Big T talked about this briefly a week or 2 ago. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if that'll be better, but all these things that are tied into this or tied into that or the Power 5, why don't you just make 2 big conferences and kind of do it that way and see where you fall? But as far as the 63-3 thing, I thought that was a complete joke. That has to make these guys at least look into what is wrong with the current system, and trying to make sure that it doesn't, something like that doesn't happen. But those Florida State third stringers were going to get beat probably pretty good by 50-60% of the teams that were probably in the bowl season. You're looking at third level level players, I should say. And that wasn't fun for Georgia either, though. I'll be honest with you. I know they won and this and that, but that couldn't have been fun for them either.
It depends. Do you remember when you were 21? Do you remember what it was like?
I think it's a little bit.
When you were 21?
Yeah, I don't know. I was never that guy, though. I'll be honest. I'm on the other side. I wanted to win at everything I did, but I obviously those kids know that the playing field wasn't equal that night to the team, that the Florida State team. That's basically the better point I was trying to make.
And next year will be different, especially here in the SEC where you have Texas and Oklahoma coming in. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get out of that conference unscathed for some of the other ones.
I would like to see where you just have to kind of win. Like when there was 6 conferences, I always said they should have made it an 18 playoff. Just have like 2 at-large picks and just put the 6 conference champions in. So when you're playing your conference championship game, like that's it. That's a playoff game. And if you're in a tougher conference, you're in a tougher conference. And then I would just do that now and just figure out a way with how they have it set up, currently to listen. You have automatic bids. That's it. You win your conference, you're in. And now maybe if you just win, I don't know how many. I got to see how they're redesigning this with there's a million teams in each conference now. But just do it that way. Take it out of the hands of the voters. I mean, you're going to have situations every year where no matter how you do it, you're going to have teams that should be in that aren't in and whatnot. But you just can't have a team. You can't have one of the major conferences go undefeated and then tell them, well, that didn't mean anything.
Right.
So I mean, you just can't have that. Even though they got, whatever, they got blown out the game. Obviously, they didn't play the starters, and whatever the case is, like you can't have that. Were they the best team? No. But you didn't put the best teams in either, because if you put the best team in, Georgia was favored over everybody. So you basically, if your argument was the best team, you didn't do that. If your argument is deserved, you didn't do that either. So just make it like if Buffalo loses this week, like Buffalo has a chance to not make the NFL playoffs, right?
Yes.
But if you're going to tell me Buffalo's not better than like half the teams that are going to be in the playoffs, you're wrong. Like they're easily better than that. Now they probably are going to get in, but there's a chance they don't. And nobody wants. There's one team everyone in the AFC is talking about. I know we're jumping ahead to NFL, but like the one team nobody in the AFC wants to play is Buffalo, including Baltimore. Like nobody wants to face Buffalo, and there's a chance they don't get in. Like you guys, this is the old guys podcast. This reminds me of remember the Eagles way back in the day with Randall Cunningham. They had like the best defense, and they missed the playoffs. It was like, I don't know if it was 1990. It was in the early 90s. They had it dominant with Reggie White and Seth Joyner. Like that whole defense. They had the number one defense, and they missed the playoffs. And that was a team like, you're like, listen, they were definitely better than some of the teams in there, but that's the rules. Like that's how you qualify. I think the 49ers that one year, or the Bears, I can't remember. I remember a 49ers Bears Monday Night Football game, and one of them did not make the playoffs, and it seems like the 49ers always did. So maybe it was the Bears, and the other team just blew them out as a statement, like, "Hey, we deserve to be in the playoffs." I can't remember the game now because I'm old, but it's happened. It happens in the NFL all the time. The Patriots had 11 wins, didn't get into the playoffs the year Brady got hurt, so it's going to happen. But I think if you do it that way, there's a whole lot less argument. Like no one's complaining when a team doesn't get in, even though their record is really good, because those are the rules going in ahead of time. When you're voting, it's like the Olympics when you've got to vote on the gymnastics or, it's why those sports they're subjective. Like, I have no idea if she got a perfect 10, but it looked pretty good to me. I just know that they scored more points than the other team. Like, that's all I know about sports,
Yes, to my untrained eye, I can't tell you what a gymnast is doing,
Right.
but I can tell you that I do remember that Eagles team always underwhelming, always underachieving with Randall Cunningham as the quarterback. Hit the like button. Bruce Hines dropped in to leave a like, and we'll check out the rest of it tomorrow. Thank you very much. Travis Duarte, cucumber, carrots, celery, apple, habanero. Yeah, sure. I'll try all of them.
Sounds
I'll
awful.
try. Maybe not in the same concoction, Uncle T. I won't try them all in the same concoction. Hit the like button. We're going to get into NFL now, and I'm going to go through these games and just briefly give out who has a chance to get in. It doesn't mean that it's because of that game or because of the specific scenario, but Pittsburgh is heading into Baltimore. Baltimore already locked up the number 1 seed in the AFC, so nothing to play for them, but Pittsburgh obviously still a chance to get in. The Texans and the Colts, I believe the winner of this game is likely in the playoffs. These are the 2 Saturday games. Sunday games, Jets, Patriots, nothing going on there. Bengals hosting the Browns. The Browns do not have a chance to get the 1 seed, but I believe they may have already clinched, so not a whole lot other than seeding. The Falcons and Saints game is bizarrely still a game that matters for playoff supremacy here. One of these teams, as terrible as it is, could actually be a division winner in the NFC South. Jaguars and Titans. Titans are out, but the Jaguars still have a chance to get in, even though they're trying desperately not to get in. Lions hosting the Vikings. Lions pretty much set with either the 2 or I should say the 3 seed. They can only get up to the 2 seed, I believe, if Philly and Dallas both lose, which is unlikely with them playing the Giants and the Commanders. That Buccaneer-Panther game, the Bucks win, and they could win the NFC South. Broncos-Raiders, I think both these teams still mathematically have a shot to get in, but it's very unlikely. Chiefs-Chargers, Chiefs looking for seeding. Seahawks and the Cardinals, a chance still for the Hawks to get in. The Bears and the Packers still with a shot to get in. Eagles, of course, can win the NFC East, as can the Cowboys. The Rams-49ers game, pretty much meaningless for both teams, with the Niners having clinched that 1 seed and the Rams basically guaranteed the 6th or the 7th. And then the Sunday night game, Uncle T, Bills and Dolphins will decide the AFC East. And as Stats pointed out, if the Bills lose and some combination of the Titans beating the Jaguars or the Steelers beating the Ravens, which is possible, happens, the Bills could miss the playoffs. As Richie Smalls points out, they could be the number 2 seed or completely out, depending on what happens. But we'll skip, unless you want to touch on Saturday and go into Sunday's slate, Uncle T. Start with you. What are your thoughts here at the quarterback position? Again, more games, it seems, matter on Sunday than we've had in the past.
Yeah. I think one thing too, real quick, before we get into the quarterback stuff, just the general topic, because we're talking about seeding and such. What do you guys think about how the seeding itself works? Right now, the division winners, like Tampa Bay, should not be able to host a game against a team that has a better record, right? Like, I don't know. We were trying to figure it out the other day and looking at the standings. Like, can Dallas? Who's Dallas going to play? Like, as if it was right now, who's Dallas got? Don't they go to Tampa Bay?
No, Dallas.
They
is
don't.
the home.
Okay.
Philly's going to go to Tampa Bay.
Oh, Philly's going to because they okay. I mean, well, it's the same point I was trying to make though, so that's good. So why should an 11-5 Philly team go to an 8-8 Tampa Bay team? And I get the division stuff. I know that's how it's always been. I'm talking about something and an idea or a thought is to just have your records and then seed them according to the records that you finished at. Like, I don't know, maybe I might be on an island here on this thought, but it just feels like that's not right for Tampa Bay to be able to host a game against a team that was 11-5. But you guys have a thought on it or no?
mean, the general thought process is there should be some reward for winning a division, but it does seem like every year in the NFL we have one of these situations where there's a division that's just not as good as the others. And I think the last couple of years, in reality, it's been the NFC South. And this year is no different, where you have, 7 and 9 teams that are in contention for the division the last week of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Just something I thought of. It's like it just doesn't feel right to me. But anyway, kind of going into the quarterback. I guess, guys, we'll talk about these plays. Obviously, it's a Tuesday night, like always, and then even the uncertainty of some of these games matter, like JT just went through, and some of them don't. So I guess in purposes of some plays, we'll just act as if all of them are equal, right? So we don't know even who's going to be in, who's going to be out, even on some of these games. So. In the early, I thought another interesting thing was there's 6 early games and 7 late games this week, as far as the breakup and the early late slate, which I thought was interesting. But I think there's a few more attractive late games as far as just the general totals of the game. You got the Seattle-Arizona game, you got the Dallas-Washington game, and let's be honest, if Washington can keep up in that game at all and everybody's playing, Dallas's players are going to look real good, and that's a nice segue into me here. Dak Prescott, $8,000. It seems like it's a little bit high. It's probably his highest. I think it is. It's tied for his highest price tag of the year. But boy, you get a pristine matchup here on the road against Washington, and it'd be hard pressed if I know I'm going to get maximum effort and play out of Dak here. I've got to like Dak Prescott probably over Hurts or Mahomes. The Hurts game, they're playing in against the Giants. We just saw this matchup a couple weeks ago, and I don't know. I don't think I can pay $8,100 for Hurts. I $7,300 even for Mahomes. I just can't play a Mahomes stack right now with this Chiefs offense. I'd rather talk more about Pacheco here in a little bit on that side of the ball. Or on that at that position. So I like Prescott as far as way up, and then Justin Fields is interesting to me in a matchup in Green Bay, 7,200. Like you mentioned, Green Bay's got to win, to get in. So I don't mind the Fields play at 7,200. Then a couple guys that are cheaper. Again, you don't know how these games are going to go, but our guy Joe Flacco, 6,500. Has a pretty good matchup here in Cincinnati. But again, I don't know, the Browns don't have anything to play for. So again, I may lean to Jerome Ford from a Cleveland standpoint and maybe not play Flacco. A couple of cheap guys, Purdy's in a good spot too against the Rams at 6,900 if you wanted to try that. But instead, if you wanted to go down, like Derek Carr, Tyrod Taylor, 5,600, 5,300, looked like pretty nice value plays this week. Tyrod Taylor probably might be my favorite, 5,300. We know Philadelphia, as much as I've been a Philly fan, most of the year, they've definitely fallen on hard times here the last couple of weeks. Now Devonta Smith, questionable to play this week. We'll talk about the receivers here in a minute. But Tyrod Taylor, JT, 5,300 might be as low as I'll go. Mullins at 5,100. I'm not sure if I want to go there, but Tyrod Taylor looks pretty enticing here as far as a cheap guy.
Stats, you have a situation with the Giants playing Philadelphia and Washington playing Dallas where, in theory, if one of those teams blows out the other team, then the other team could sit their guys at the half. We also have a situation where, again, these late season NFC East games have been dicey, right? Because they seem to play each other closer, but they're also slower. They tend to be anyway. But we've seen just last Sunday what opposing teams, the Arizona Cardinals go into Philly and Kyler Murray shreds the Eagles defense. Tyrod Taylor looked fine last Sunday. He was in the winner on a lot of lineups at 4,600. He gets a little price bump. But what are your thoughts here at the quarterback position on a 13-game Sunday slate?
Just talking about the NFC East, I wouldn't really put too much weight. Like I wouldn't, for DFS purposes, I wouldn't necessarily shy away from anybody because you're worried about a blowout. And then, like, if Dallas is just up big at the half, will they sit Hurts or anything like that? I think you just kind of have to play it out as it is. And if that happens to you, that happens to you. So, if it's sort of a tiebreaker situation, you're putting in a single entry and you say, you know what, I'm gonna stay away from a Philly player because there's a chance they may sit in the second half. and you like another player just as well on another team, then fine, go that way. But I wouldn't necessarily build my lineups with that in mind. And when you look at Philly, listen, the Giants, they only played them 2 weeks ago. They just played them like on Christmas Day. The Giants were pretty much in that game. It was a little bit closer, or a little maybe not as close as the score, but the Giants were right there with a shot to tie that game. Was it to tie the game or win the game there at the end with Taylor? He did have one shot in the end zone late. So, I mean, the way Philly's played, it's only a 5-point spread. Like I think we're just looking at these, we're looking at Philly thinking this is the Philly of the beginning of the season. I want to just say this. I know someone mentioned it in the chat before. I was killing the Philly fans. I was killing Philly all season long. I've been, so far, they've proven me correct in these last few weeks that this was not the dominant team in the NFL. The 10-1 record was a bit of smoke and mirrors. This team is right where they should be right now. I mean, they're a solid team. I had them 11 in the power rankings. They're probably a little bit better than that, which I was saying all year. You got to kind of bump them up in the power ratings, my ratings, just because I think their efficiency on fourth down with the tush push and whatnot. But that only is going to get them to like their 7th or 8th best team in the league. And I think that's probably appropriate. That's where they should be. But can the Giants win this game? Absolutely. I think the crazier thing I think of is Washington wins this game. Washington, since they lost the couple of players that they lost on defense really have not been a factor at all. Look at what Washington, you talk about quarterbacks, look at what Washington's given up in the last, I think since they've made those trades. I think the least they've given up is 28 or 29 points or something like that in their last 7 games. So, I mean, Dallas in a game that they have to win, I find it hard to believe that Dak's not going to have a monster game here. I know they haven't been that great on the road. We'll keep an eye out for the weather. Weather will, if the weather's a factor, that could change things. But I think you have to look at Dak, even at the high price tag, maybe having the best matchup. The other guy I like at the top is Fields. I think Chicago's super live. I think Chicago's actually the better team right now, to be honest with you. I think Chicago's better than Green Bay. So I like Chicago in the game. I think Fields will have a big game. Now, Green Bay has owned Chicago. So this will be a nice payback for the Bears to be able to knock Green Bay out. They love to do that. I think Fields is going to be here next year. I think Fields will come back with Chicago. I don't think they trade him. I think maybe they trade the pick. I think that would be, to me, that would be the better option. They still need a lot of pieces on this team. So build by trading that one pick. I think that's the route they'll go. So I think Fields is back to stay. I think Fields has a big game in this one. Then just kind of going down the list, it's tough because you don't know necessarily all these games who would be playing, but Baker Mayfield, decent matchup here against Carolina. You gotta like the Seattle game. Geno, I think, should have a pretty good matchup with Arizona. There was the one game I really like. You mentioned Mullins. And I kind of like him down here at 5,100. So I would go as low as Mullins against Detroit. I think that game is going to be high scoring. One thing, Mullins will take some chances. And I think if things click right, he could have a big game. So I think at that low price, I don't mind going all the way down to Mullins at 5,100.
Down to Mullins at 5,100. Kevin Gallagher, obviously an Eagles fan in here. He was face palming as you were talking about the collapse of the Eagles, but it isn't beyond the pale here that game is close. I think you're right. I think it's tough to see Washington competing. I mean, they were going to start Jacoby Brissett, then something happens to him in practice. Sam Howell starts. It wasn't a good game for him against the 49ers. We'll keep an eye on that East Coast weather as well as all things about this slate. Stats will stick with you at the running back position. You've been able to run all over Washington. The problem is the Cowboys just have been pass heavy. And even when they've tried to run, Tony Pollard has not looked that good. He is the running back here in the game for the team with the highest implied total, 29.25 for the Cowboys. Moving down a little bit, you've got Kenneth Walker a little bit banged up, and then some real uncertainty here on this Sunday slate. But what are your thoughts at the running back position?
Well, yeah, no, I agree with you. You would think on the surface Pollard would be a really strong play, but projection-wise, it's kind of, so-so. You would think if they do get a lead, they're going to be able to pound the ball on him. But I agree. I like the passing side of that game a lot better than I like the run side. Guy who kind of pops out to me as I'm looking at it, on this it's one of the first looks that I'm looking at now, and I'm looking at my projections team wise. If you see the way over the last 5 weeks, so kind of where we're trending, the running back situation, Arizona against Seattle. So that could be a big one there. If you could target Connor, it looks like, he's kind of getting the bulk of the work. I think they're in a good spot. I've got them over the last 5. That's my highest projected at the running back position. The other one over the last 5, Kansas City's in a good spot here at running back. So we're looking at Pacheco at the back. So those are some of the backs that are kind of popping for me. I think you have a shot here with San Francisco. We got to see what San Francisco now. Williams is going to be the highest priced guy on the board. I don't know. I mean, is San Francisco basically going to sit everybody? I haven't looked at anything. Are they not playing starters?
Christian McCaffrey has already been ruled out. Eli Mitchell had a big game against the Commanders after he went out. Eli Mitchell's 5,800 on DraftKings against the Rams, who should also be sitting some people.
Yeah, so I don't know that one's gonna be true, because if the Rams are playing players here, then and Williams is gonna play a full game, you hate to pay up the 8,000, but against backups for San Fran, that looks like a good spot. White, I don't like that one against Carolina's been sneaky good against running backs, so at 7,600, don't like that play. I don't like Kamara up there. I just don't like a lot of these high priced running backs this week. So I think it's going to be mid type running backs that you're going to want to focus on. As I'm just scrolling down the list, it's just no one's popping out at me. ETN, I don't particularly care for the situation. Even Breece Hall against New England, don't love it. The first guy I really like is at 7K is that Pacheco, and maybe Barkley. I got to look at what the numbers say, but potentially Barkley there. It's like on the season, not looking good, but trending the right direction for Barkley. So I would say he's definitely going to be in the mix, but not one of my stronger plays. Gibbs should be a good play, I think, against Minnesota. I'm gonna see if my numbers, that's just kind of eyeball. Yeah, my numbers kind of back that as well. So I do like that one too, up at the top. But Eckler against Kansas City, Eckler just you can't like that. This Kansas City defense has just been really nasty, and Eckler just hasn't done a lot for us recently. So, and then when you get down to Kenneth Walker, I agree. So I kind of think that game, actually, that Seattle game, is one of the ones that I like as far as stacking the game. So I don't mind stacking that with the running backs as well. I told you I like Connor, but I like Walker there too.
Uncle T, running back position, we've got some value with Eli Mitchell. There's a couple of other guys here. We have to see what goes on with the situation with a couple of these different teams. Everyone expected Isaiah Spiller to get more work. He didn't. The Chargers situation seems like it's just hopeless. Saquon Barkley at 6,900 against the Eagles. He did have a good game the last time out against the Eagles. And then one guy I want to point out, 20 touches over the course of the last couple of weeks, finally fully healthy in that matchup that stats liked for Justin Fields. Khalil Herbert at 5,700 against the Packers. What are your thoughts here at running back?
Yeah, you guys mentioned a lot of the guys, so that's good that we're even early in the week on the same guys here, at least early. But Kyron Williams, you would think on the surface, again, we keep saying it, but we have to kind of throw it out there. If Kyron Williams gets the full workload, or even half of a workload against those backups, he played pretty good against this San Francisco. Again, it was way back, I think in week 2 or 3. I think he put up, maybe 25 points or so. I think he might have had a running touchdown and a receiving touchdown. So even though it's against San Francisco, tough matchup, like Seth said, 8K feels like a little hefty price tag to pay, but I like him. But I think Pacheco at 7,000 might be my favorite spend up. Now I like Kyron, but I think my favorite spend up as far as price included would probably be Pacheco. He was kind of doubtful most of the weekend and then showed up and was going to be probable in that game against the Bengals. And as a Bengals fan, I was hoping he didn't play because I knew obviously they'd have a better chance. They had all them other guys hurt. Pacheco had a great game against the Bengals and looked really, really good. So I like the matchup there. Jahmyr Gibbs, he had I think put up 25 points against this Minnesota team last time out. I love the Jahmyr Gibbs call at 6,700. One guy neither one of you mentioned in that same Chicago game. We'll talk about Herbert here in a second, and I agree with Herbert. Aaron Jones, JT. back-to-back, I think 20-plus rushes in the last 2 weeks. He's looked really good. Looks kind of finally where he might be pretty close to 100% now we're at the end of the year. He's been battling injuries on and off all year, but I like Aaron Jones a little bit, 6,300 in that matchup. And stats at the top of your running back thought, James Conner and Kenny Walker. I love the James Conner has been really good. I mean, really good, sneaky good all year long, and only 6,100. I love that matchup. And if Kenny Walker, I think he went out and didn't come back last week. I don't know how serious that is. If he plays, obviously he's a good play. If he doesn't, you could get a cheap Charbonnet at 5K if somehow he's ruled out. Right, 5K for Charbonnet in that same matchup, right, against a bad rush defense. So I wouldn't mind that. And then two guys in the high 5Ks that you guys talked about. One, Khalil Herbert, 5,700. I like that quite a bit. He's been really good the last 3 weeks. And then Jerome Ford. Now, I mentioned I didn't like Flacco, and again, I know Cleveland doesn't have anything to play for. So if Jerome Ford could get a lot of rest here too. So I want to preface it by saying if he plays, I don't mind him at 5.6K, but I may not be targeting really much of anything in that Cleveland-Cincinnati game. There's just too much, Cleveland, again, nothing to play for. The Bengals haven't looked real good the last couple of weeks. So, but if everything was equal and I knew I would get a full workload out of Jerome Ford, I wouldn't mind him here either, JT, at 5.6K. But there's a lot to like at the running back position from that 7K down, and obviously there's not too many above it. I don't like Rashad White either, so I agree with stats on that one.
Richie Smalls wants to ask about the Steelers running backs. They're on the Saturday slate, and it will be against the Ravens. It may be against the backups. And for the two-gamer, I think they are likely have to be in play. I would think that you're also going to have to consider Devin Singletary. Jonathan Taylor will likely be popular, even though Houston has been very, very tough against the run. And you're probably going to get mostly backup time. I don't know if you're going to get just a lot of Justice Hill or Gus Edwards in that game for the Ravens against the Steelers. And to the point of Charbonnet versus Ken Williams, Pete Carroll, the Seahawks have been very, very stubborn about playing Kenny Williams, even though he's been a little bit banged up. And so it's led to kind of, shorter games, shorter outings for him. And then Charbonnet comes in. It sucks because it is the best matchup on paper against Arizona for opposing running backs, even though the Eagles decided not to try and do that last week. What can you do? Uncle T, we move on to the running back, the wide receiver position. CeeDee Lamb gets that matchup that we were talking about earlier against the Redskins, of course, coming off a massive 227-yard receiving performance. All of the Seahawk receivers in Arizona look like good plays. James Conner had a huge game at running back for Arizona last week because of the fact that a lot of Arizona's wide receivers are banged up. And then the Philly Giant game, interesting there based on the pass funnel for Philly. But what do you see at wide receiver?
Yeah, there's a lot to like up top at the wide receiver position as far as players and matchups this week. Again, and based off what we just talked about with the running back position, really kind of like in that mid to lower tier, that that maybe 7K with Pacheco, and then the mid guys we talked about, and even a couple in the 5K, and then I've got a couple cheaper tight ends that I'm interested in this week that we'll talk about here in a minute. So it might lead me, guys, to I might just try to jam two of these guys in to my lineups this week. CeeDee Lamb, again, 9,300, but he's got the nut matchup here. And after Dallas decided back in whatever week that was, 4, 5, 6, that they weren't going to be able to run the ball, and they decided to just more or less throw it. I mean, CeeDee Lamb has literally been nuclear. I mean, it's crazy how good he's been. So, again, I don't mind that. I mean, he's got a 25. What's his projection? His projection's got to be mid-20s, right? Let's see.
For CeeDee Lamb?
Got to be close to that.
Projection I'm seeing right now is about 25.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was going to say mid-20s. So, yeah, that's going to be hard to turn down if you knew, again, that Washington, if they can keep up at all, I'm going to like the Dak to Lamb this week. A.J. Brown, now Devonta Smith, I don't think he'll play. I think they're talking about a high ankle sprain. We'll see how it goes throughout the week. But if it's a high ankle sprain, there's no chance he's playing probably, right? I mean, I wouldn't think so. I mean, they're already into the playoffs. I don't think they would take a chance on hurting that worse. So, but is that what you got?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So St. Brown, our boy Amonra, 86, and Jefferson in that same matchup. You can kind of pick and choose who you want there, but both of them are in great spots. And then you got the two Rams guys. So if you're kind of not on the Kyron thing, or if you are, and depending on who's going to play Kupp and Puka, they've both been really good. So you got a lot of good guys up in the top part of the wide receiver range that, again, I might just try to jam in two of these guys. And then let me just give a couple cheap ones because I don't want to take them all here for stats, but a couple of cheap guys down below that feel like they're, pretty good matchup here as well. Like Cooks in that same Dallas matchup. If you kind of don't want to pay 9,300, Brandon Cooks is cheap still at 5.2. JSN's 4,800, and then a couple other real cheap guys in that Giants game. You've got Julio Jones. This is for Philly, obviously. So if Devonta Smith is out, it gives you a couple cheap punts if you don't want to go with A.J. Brown with Julio Jones and Quez Watkins. Again, these guys aren't, great plays. I know Julio somehow fell in the box twice last week for touchdowns, which was crazy. But you do have a couple cheap guys there that'll be on the field probably if Devonta sits.
Julio's best game in at least 4 seasons. Stats. One of the games that matters here, Tampa Bay, Carolina. Carolina has been tough against opposing wide receivers, but you have to have some interest in a game that really matters for Tampa Bay, especially coming off a game where they almost got shut out by the Saints. Have to have some interest in Evans and Godwin. And then Chris Olave, look, DJ Moore ran all over the Atlanta Falcons secondary last week in much tougher weather. But what are your thoughts overall here at the wide receiver position?
Yeah, I'll agree with you on the Tampa side. So I do think Mike Evans is certainly in play. He's seen, for the most part, that's been the guy when you have to pick between the two, between him and Godwin. It has been Evans, but I won a lot of money a couple of weeks ago taking Godwin. It's a lot cheaper of a price. You're saving $1,100 on Godwin, so I don't mind playing Godwin there. But I do think you can target them, even though they've actually been decent. Carolina against the well, they've been good against the running backs, but they have not been good against the passing. So that's a game that you will want to target. Up at the top, I agree with Uncle T. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is the class this week. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And we talked about it when we were talking about running back. I think that's the route that Dallas is going to go. Why change it now? Like, that's kind of the formula that's gotten Dallas to this point. It's been a whole lot of CeeDee Lamb with Dak Prescott. It has not been the run game. I don't think that changes this week against a team that you could clearly throw against. Everyone else has. Dallas should as well. So I kind of agree that if you want to get a piece of that pass game, maybe you want to do it a little cheaper, you can go down to Cooks. I think the guy I don't like up here is A.J. Brown. I would stay clear of that one, but I like almost all the other guys up at the top. Amon-Ra, I like Justin Jefferson there because I mentioned I like Mullen, so I don't mind that stack there with Jefferson. Kupp's tricky. I love the matchup here as well. Again, we're going to have to look and see if who's playing, if they're going to be playing or not. But if they are playing, this is if we get starters in that game, I don't know if they're going to throw Kupp out there like that. I'd be surprised maybe if he plays the whole game. But I would look then to Puka. I think it's going to be. I think it was a good matchup. If San Francisco was playing this game, I kind of like this matchup. So I like it even more if a few guys are going to be benched. So I think this week, construction wise, you're going to be looking at pretty expensive wide receivers. I think you can get cheaper on the running back. And I like some of the mid-level kind of tight ends that we'll get to in a bit as well. But I think you're going to be playing up or paying up this week at wide receiver. There's not a ton. I will say to go down a little bit, the Green Bay wide receivers, Dobbs, Reed, well, we'll see. Is Reed playing or his x-rays were negative? So I assume he's going to probably play. I don't really have a good read for you right now on which one of those guys I would give the upper hand to. But I think, if Reed is in there, it's probably going to be him at 5,700. I think that's a really good matchup against Chicago. Even though I like the Bears in that game, I think there's going to be points scored. Again, as we always look at this time of year, you just this is going to be weather. We'll wait and see on the weather if we get bad situations, things change. But all things being equal, I think Green Bay passing game is going to be very much in play this week.
I'd be very surprised if we see starters, a full complement of starters in that San Francisco Ram game. And even if they say the starters are playing, I'd be very cautious about that game. Richie Smalls, neither of you guys mentioned this team, and I think the reason why, and I'm going to say this, but Richie Smalls is asking, you got to like the Jags versus the Titans. Look, it all depends. They did not look good with C.J. Beathard last week. I guess they looked fine, right? But C.J. Beathard didn't look fine. It was really Travis Etienne that did the heavy lifting, as well as the defense. Of course, that was a matchup against the Panthers. Not that the Titans are all that much better than the Panthers, but I think all of that comes down to how much you like the Jaguars receivers, directly dependent on what the story is with Trevor Lawrence as we get towards the end of the week here. News hasn't been coming out. They had seemed most of the season they were determined to put him on the field. So it was pretty big that they sat him for that game. Of course, they win handily. Now they play another game where they're going to be favored in. What are your guys' thoughts? Yeezy says Christian Kirk coming back. Is that true? He's only $3K on DraftKings. That would be.
I heard he's on. I did not hear that. I was going to bring that up. If that's true,
yeah. Season. Yeah.
I thought he was on IR, but I might be wrong. Yeah. I did not bring the game up. Neither did Stats. I do like Ridley. If everything was, again, if Lawrence is in, clearly the game is meaningful for them. And looking more at Ridley, he did absolutely crush against this Tennessee team earlier in the year, put up 34 DK points. So not that that's, again, the only thing that we're going to look at. But, okay, it looks like they're saying the window's open where he could play. I mean, if he plays, at 3K, obviously that could be a nice punt for maybe Kirk, but I don't mind 6,500 for Ridley. It's a 39 total, 39.5 total, but I'd probably go the Ridley route, 6,500. But a lot of that's dependent. JT, like you mentioned, Beathard did not look great in my opinion. I'm going to go the other side. I didn't think he looked good at all, but.
21-day practice window. I'd be surprised if he played. I think that's in the hopes that they beat up on Tennessee and get into the playoffs. And then potentially, Stats, you could have them start Beathard again against the Titans thinking, hey, even though it's a divisional matchup and they know them, the Titans are really, really thin, thinking, hey, we can win this game. And if we can get into the playoffs with a healthy Trevor Lawrence and with a healthy Christian Kirk coming back, then maybe they can make some noise.
Yeah, certainly possible. I think you have a number in your head as far as how healthy, what percentage of health that, when the doctors come to you and say he's 85, that's the number in your head. Like, he's 85% health. Okay. 85 or better, we're going to play him. Anything less than that, we sit him wherever that number may be. But I think you got to be careful in this game. This is going to be Derrick Henry's last game with the Titans. And I have a feeling this is going to be a heavy Derrick Henry game. So Tennessee is going to look to slow this game down, pound the ball with Henry. So it may be a little bit lower scoring than we want. I mean, it's only a 40.5 total. So that could limit, if they are successful running the ball with Henry, that'll limit the amount of touches that Jacksonville gets. But obviously this game is hugely dependent on the fact if Lawrence is playing, yes, then I'm going to like some pieces there. No Lawrence, I'm not touching the game at all.
Tennessee, I mean, those games, they drain the time out of the clock. I mean, there's several teams that are doing that at this point in the season. Panthers are another one where it's like, hey, how quickly can we get this game over? Just to make sure that David Tepper doesn't throw any drinks on anyone else. Big apology there from the Panthers owner today after his $300,000 fine. I don't know if you guys saw that, but not a great couple of years so far in Carolina. But Uncle T, will stick with you. Go ahead, Stats.
I want to know how you fire coaches like 2 years in a row mid-season, and how you fire a guy with a rookie quarterback. Like, what was your expectations this year?
The thing about Carolina that's so odd is obviously anyone who buys an NFL team has had some success in their life, right? So let's just say, and he says, hey, I want to win and I want to do all the right things. And they had I forget the guy's name. He now I think is the coach at
Matt Rule,
Nebraska, right? Matt Rule. So
yeah.
that didn't work out well. And you could say, okay, I understand that. Why are you hiring? I mean, and that's the thing, right? All these guys, it's such a small little community that all these guys get second chances. I mean, Todd Bowles, I was shocked, got a second chance. And of course, now look at where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are. It's not necessarily Todd Bowles. It's a resurgence, a renaissance from Baker Mayfield. You have thoughts on Todd Bowles' stats? You remember?
I cannot believe Todd Bowles is a head coach in this league. I'll just take quick. I'm listening. I'm flipping through the radio, Sirius, and I stop on like the NFL network, and I hear this was like 2 weeks ago, and I hear whoever's speaking, and I thought it was a caller. It was Todd Bowles, and I'm like, I said, like, part of your position is kind of like being the CEO, right? It's part of a CEO's job is to actually be good with the press. They have to speak. That's part of the head coach's job as well. I thought he might be a great coordinator, but he's just not. To me, he's not a great head coach. And I watched them enough with the Jets to know that. Now I'm down in Tampa, so I watched enough of their games. He's not a great head coach.
It was miserable. I mean, they didn't, and you can't put this on Todd Bowles, the fact that they didn't show up for that game against the Saints on Sunday. But I mean, there's no passion for it. It's hard to get invested in a head coach when he just always looks the same no matter what's going on, right? I know that's not right, but I mean, you'd like to see some type of enthusiasm, some type of, man, that play really didn't go well. You just don't see that from him. And you don't see game plans in tough matchups that you're impressed by, that are there's no creativity there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's hard to dissect the X's and O's, as fans, and I'm not watching all the coaches' film. I do watch some of it, but I haven't watched a ton of theirs. But he's a defensive guy. It just, to me, I want the guy, the guy who was on the hot seat was like a guy like Mike Tomlin. I'm like, I'll take Mike Tomlin on my team any day. Like, that's a guy people want to run through a wall for, right? That's what I want my head coach to do. I want the coordinators to be good at calling plays, and I want my head coach to be a fiery guy, a motivator, who's going to understand how to manage a game properly. And a lot of these head coaches can't do that, but that's because they're preoccupied with calling plays on either the offensive or defensive side of the ball. But Todd Bowles is not. To me, it's just not a great head coach.
Every team wants to win. Every team's fan base wants to win the Super Bowl. But think about it this way, Uncle T. I saw a lot of very angry Steelers fans this week because Mike Tomlin once again has a winning season. And, if you're a fan of the Jets or if you're a fan of the Falcons, if you're a fan of the Las Vegas Raiders or the Los Angeles Chargers, goodness, wouldn't it be terrible to have just nothing but winning seasons, even if every year it didn't mean you got that championship?
Yeah, JT, you brought up Tomlin, and like I said, just real quick, I know we'll get to tight ends and get out of here, but yeah, Uncle T's got to eat a little bit of crow for a few of his takes this year. I mean, I still think Pittsburgh might be the first team that if they get in, that they're not going to win, because I don't think they're that strong. But to Stats' point, like Tomlin, how would you not like to play for him? They play hard for him. They would go through a wall, like you said, for him, and they win. So I still don't think team wise they're very good, but they beat my Bengals twice, and they're looking pretty good. And then the other two, since I'm going to sit here and cap on myself here. I was on the Eagles. They've been on the decline. They're kind of what everybody thought they were. I still think they're a decent team. But they've had some problems the last few weeks. And then Baltimore, I haven't been necessarily against Baltimore all year. I still am, the jury still might be out for me on Lamar winning games in the playoffs. And clearly he could do that again this year. They're going to have the 1 seed. They had the 1 seed a few years back and had the dud game against Tennessee when they went in there and won. But so I've had a few bad takes, and I'll go, I'll take my L's, but I don't know. I have no problem with Tomlin though, for sure. Even though he's one of the Bengals rivals, obviously playing them twice a year, but they've owned my Bengals for sure.
All right, let's get to tight ends and get on out of here, Uncle T. I think you've got to start, if you're looking at tight end this week, you got to start with Trey McBride. You got to start with considering Jake Ferguson. You can go down from there. Obviously, you've got Cade Otton for cheaper for Tampa Bay. If you wanted to fuck around with the Falcons tight ends, I don't know why you might, but you might, whatever. What are your thoughts here, though, with the tight end position?
Yeah, first glance, I talked about it a little bit in the construction going through the other positions, but it looks like it could be a spot where, again, if you're looking to go up at those four guys over 6K, you got Kelsey, 6,600. I think it's the sixth straight week he's been lower priced each week. And I still don't think I can get on board. 6,600 feels like it's the cheapest we've seen Kelsey in the last couple of years.
3 targets last week, though. I think it was.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, I just don't think I can do it, even though the price tag kind of might suck in some people, but I don't think I can do it. And then you get down to, I'm not really on Laporta this week. I think I like Minnesota against the tight end. They've done a pretty good job against the tight end position. The two guys that are in play for me, if you're going up, are the two guys that have been arguably the best tight ends in the league the back half of the year, and that's Njoku and McBride. 6,400 and 6K, both of them in really good matchups this week against the Bengals and against the Seahawks. So if you're going to go up, I'd rather probably go to Njoku, McBride. If you wanted, if everything was equal in the San Francisco game and they were playing and it meant something, Kittle at 5.2K would be in play for me because I think he always usually does pretty good in that matchup against the Rams, but I don't think I'm going to go there this week. But I do have three guys in the mid 3Ks that I like. Tucker Kraft, 3.7K against Chicago. Again, he's one of these guys that are in this range that has been getting some pretty good targets. 6 targets, 3 straight weeks, been double-figure points. And then Jawan Johnson, 19 targets the last 2 weeks from David Carr. So I like him. And then JT it'd be fitting, right, to finish out the last regular season Old Guys pod, me bringing up my boy Chig Okonkwo, 3.5K against Jacksonville. Could be in play. I don't like him as much. I just wanted to bring him up to more or less needle you.
No, I appreciate that. Chig Okonkwo was chalk for most of the season, the second part, just because he was a cheap tight end getting like 3 or 4 targets. And I didn't like it, Stats. I didn't like it at all. I would be on board with the Njoku call. I really don't know. I think we're going to have to see how he's also 6,400. I mean, that's super high.
That's
I get
crazy.
It, but I think that we see some news out of Cleveland about some restrictions here. Stats, what are your thoughts of the tight end position?
Yeah, I mean, Uncle T is willing to take his losses. I totally forget about all my losses. I'm just going to tell you all my good takes. But I'll tell you, at the halftime of that first Flacco game, I tweeted out that is Joe Flacco one of the top 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and now I think that's been proven to be true. It's crazy, Flacco, and he's turned Njoku into what Travis Kelce hopes to be. Like Njoku's just it's unbelievable. And these guys are only $200 apart now this week. But we'll have to just take a wait and see on that game. But I do like Laporta more than Uncle T does in this game. So I do like Laporta, and I'll give you a few guys that Uncle T didn't mention that I like. I like Ingram against Tennessee this week's been decent here in recent games. Last game, nothing great, 12 points, but 18.5 in the game before that. So I do like Ingram. And then when you move to that sub 5K level, I told you I think Fields has a pretty big game, and one of the guys he likes to go to is Kmet. So I think Kmet is in a good spot this week at 4,500. He's fairly consistent. When you look at the Bears offense, when they're passing it well, what they tend to do is really quick passes, and it's to his first read. He doesn't really read the field. He doesn't get down to the second and third read all that often. And his first read is pretty much going to be Moore or Kmet. So that's why Kmet's usually a good play with Fields. And then a guy that this is a team I don't necessarily like to target against, and maybe you guys will think I'm nuts, but he's had a good couple of weeks, and that's Hunter Henry. Now, 2 weeks ago, he had 2 touchdowns, only 3 targets, but 9 targets last week against a really strong Kansas City defense. I think Henry's in play here against the Jets at 4,100. I wouldn't sleep on that one.
All right. So things to consider. Lots of news to come throughout the week. We've got you covered here at Run Pure Sports. We are going to have, of course, a bunch of shows throughout the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and then our normal Sunday block this week, beginning with the Off the Chalk show, the Morning Wood show on Sunday. I'll have an article up this week, Contrarian Contenders. Stats is going to be publishing his stack probability chart, which is a great tool to take a look at. Uncle T, you writing up some games this week? What are you taking a look at some things here for the NFL?
No, nothing really for the NFL. JT, I know talking to Holden through the direct message earlier, we're going to try to maybe record a playoff version of the Old Guys pod. Stats are always welcome for sure. Maybe I'll talk to you. I can't do it on Tuesday next week, but we're going to try to maybe find a day, maybe Monday or Wednesday, and try to get preview that 6-game. I think it's 6 games.
Great slate.
Yeah, 6-game playoff. So we're going to do that. And then JT, Snyder's got the golf playbook already up. We're going to have full coverage of the first golf tournament as far as content and cores and things like that up on the site probably midday tomorrow to preview that. And then we'll just have all of the showdown stuff as well. But that's all I've got going. And I want to thank Stats for joining us. I always appreciate him coming in. It's always a lot of fun.
Do want to thank Stats as well. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to Uncle T. Remember, if you're not a member, lots of codes you can use, but I would use code New Year because it is the new year. Happy New Year to those of you. Thank you for watching us. As Uncle T mentions, we will be back with a playoff edition of the Old Guys Pod, and we'll see if we can coax Stats in to make it a 4-man booth for next week. For Uncle T, for Stats, I am JT. Good luck this week.